For today, we will talk about global governance, international law, and organizations. International law and organizations are manifestation of global governance for a more cooperative and peaceful world. Okay, so in an anarchic society or anarchic world, there is no governing body which has the sovereignty to rule the world. So international law and organizations are the keys to better realize this global governance that will somehow take or give control and promote security and relationships between states through international law and organizations. Okay, so global governance is a governance for a world without world government. So there are no such thing that or an entity that will control the entire world, control all the states in the world. Where therefore, international law and organizations are the factors or the instrumentalities that will enable global governance. So next, there are two kinds of international organizations. Number one is the intergovernment or IGOs, meaning these organizations are composed of states. And next is non-governmental organizations or NGOs that are composed with non-governmentally funded organizations that exert effort to influence on international politics. Okay, so international law. It is also referred as law of the nations. It is a body of rules which binds states and other agents in world politics in their relations with one another. Okay, so international law is the law of the nations that binds them for their relationships with one another. It is their force or their instrumentality, the factor that can help them have a good relationship with one another, or it will be on the other way around. Okay, so international law is ultimately based on consent. States must accept its provisions explicitly or implicitly to be bound by them. Okay, so international laws are subject for the acceptance of states. So therefore, it is for the state to accept that international law for them to be binded by it. So meaning, if they do not, then they are not part of the international law. They cannot enjoy or experience the benefits or the pros of that particular law in terms of their domestic and international affairs. Okay, so next are the sources of international law. There are two primary sources: treaties and customary practices. Customary practices are established and consistent practices of states in international relations. So, meaning that these source of international law are based on custom or what they have already been doing ever since. A good example of customary practice is diplomatic immunity, whereas when a diplomat from other states visit a particular country, he or she is privileged to have this immunity wherein he or she cannot be sued or has the protection of the state. And treaties, or also known as charters, pacts, conventions, or covenants, these are ratified charters or charters of a state that are used as a source for international law. So violation and compliance. Okay, so states justify what they do in terms of international law. Okay, so some powerful states use or violate international law as they argue that what they have done is usable or is valid. Number 3, states obey the international law because they are enforced by reciprocity. Okay, so it is do unto others what you want others do unto you. So if you won't follow or abide by the international law, then expect that you will have more you will have more negative effects to your state. So whereas if you do good or you continue to follow or abide to the international law, then other players of the international arena might as well give back to you. Okay, so next is areas of international law. Okay, so first area is human rights under international law. Human beings have inherent rights regardless of laws enacted by governments. These concepts are grounded in the doctrine of natural laws. Okay, so it is stated here that human beings have inherent rights. So we as humans have inherent rights that are instilled to us the moment we are born, or the moment we are conceived. Okay, so that right or those rights are within us that are above or above the laws enacted by the government. Okay, so that right is within us. So regardless of whatever law the government enacts, as long as we uphold that right, that is our supreme responsibility, or that's our supreme privilege to enjoy that right regardless of the rights enacted by a specific government. Okay, so those concepts of inherent rights are grounded in the doctrine of natural law. The doctrine of natural law holds the idea that we have acquired our rights through a higher degree of law.
My topic was, can human rights conventions be enforced? So, can human rights conventions be enforced quickly? So, in that easy way? So, of course, we have many steps to answer that question. So, here, the human rights versus state sovereignty. So, in that time, like, human rights have chased from the principle of state sovereignty, which is the state sovereignty won out, that there are torture, imprisonment for political activity, other abuses of human rights practiced by government. So not only in that particular country, but all places in the world. So next, warfare and aggression. So an early agreement on the warfare was the 1856 Declaration of Paris. So this is the early agreement, the Declaration of Paris, by which clarified the rights of neutral vessels. So 1945, the UN Charter allows states to use force or other coercive methods, including economic sanctions. So in UN Charter, they are allowed, or the states are allowed to use force and other methods. And some of that methods were the economic sanctions. No, so it can be found in UN Charter. So another set of conventions, 1899, the Hague Convention and the Geneva Protocol. So prohibit the use of poisonous or asphyxiating gases. So those poisonous and asphyxiating gases were the chemical weapons that were used as their weapons during wartime. So they are strictly prohibited in that time. But then there were country nga violated the accord on poisonous together with the other country. So that is the Iraq. So Iraq violated the accord poisonous together with Iran, because they have war against its own Kurdish citizen. So they only fight with their own citizens, diba? So, a third set of agreements seeks to protect human rights during war force. So, the last agreement, um, the objective is to protect human rights during war force or during wartime. Then, it refers to protect sick and wounded combatants are laid out in 1864. So, during that war, there are lots of the armies that were sick and wounded. So, this number three, the third set of agreements, it was being implemented for the protection and will help the sick and wounded combatants. So, next, effectiveness and compliance. So, ay, kita-kita dito. The versatile on international law. So, NGOs have been instrumental in promoting and encouraging international law, resolving various global issues, and thereby influencing governments to support legal measures. So, NGOs in that time, murag siya may nahimong instruments in promoting and encouraging international law to resolve various global issues. So, problems in the community or in the world. So, and influencing government to support local measures. So, let's proceed to international organizations. So, it is clear that international organizations try to make the world a less anarchic place by assuming task states. So, before, from humanitarian to peacekeeping. So, international organizations' objective is to have peaceful country, peaceful community. So, both a cause and effect of globalization in the contemporary era. So, international organization are the cause and effect of globalization, by which it helps increasing political, social, and economic issues. So, with this international organization, our country improve not only in social and political, but also in economic, because many countries were united. So, they have connection with each other already in terms of economic status. So, I can be divided into two broad categories. So, the two broad categories of IOS are IGOs and NGOs. So, IGO stands for Intergovernmental Organizations and NGOs for Non-Governmental Organizations. So, IGOs, examples were are United Nations, African Union, Arab League, and European Union. While sa NGO, the example is the G8 or the group of 8 countries. So, we have the International Governmental Organization. So, on that time, there are lots of doubts and arguments on IGO because before daw dili pa kay siya effective and people were asking kung unsay mahitabo with this organization. The Security IGOs, the United Nations, the Concert of Europe, and League of Nations. So, the League of Nations, so the examples of United Nations were the Concert of Europe and League of Nations. So, the League of Nations has 4 components. So, the Assembly, the Council, the Secretariat, and the World Court. So, those are the 4 main components of League of Nations. So, the United Nations is born President Franklin D. Roosevelt and Secretary of State Cordell Hull, name of the League of Nations. They were President Franklin were the one who named the League of Nations. So, UN Charter established 6 primary organs of UN. So, excuse me. The General Assembly, which is here. So the General Assembly, Security, International Court, and International Court of Justice. So those are the 6 primary organs of UN.
Okay, now let's proceed to the United Nations Functions and Politics General Assembly. So from 51 original members, the UN General Assembly has expanded to include 192 nation states. So the states that are not members of it are Taiwan, North and South Korea. So the Taiwan are not permitted to join the nation states because of the PRC or People Republic of China claims that sovereignty is over them. Then General Assembly is the uh, UN's primary sword for the discussion of global issues. Then their principle is one state and one vote. And then the USSR exploited this rupture to its advantage by taking stance. Then in 1960, 17 new states, or most of them are African, joined the General Assembly, and then followed by 1980s, over half of the 160 members of the General Assembly were either Asian or African. Then the disagreements between developed and developing countries during the Cold War of East and West, then followed in 1998, the US assessments to the UN were in areas by more than $1.3 billion, half of the total owed to the UN by member state. And then in 1999, the Congress passed the Helms-Bidan Agreement, which totaling of $926 million, which is their debt. Then it is followed by the Security Council, and it was designed to be the sword and beside UN's olive branch. And then so they changed with organizing security operations, dispatching observers, missions, and peacekeeping troops around the world. And then next is the great power anonymity. It is a concept that holds on all resolutions and proposal before the Security Council. So it means that all the proposals nga namuagi jud siya usa sa great power anonymity before siya moabot sa Security Council. And the next is the Secretariat and Secretary General. So the Secretariat General is thus the concept that holds on the UN chief administrative body, and then the Secretary General is thus the chief executive of UN but has only little power to act independently to the Security Council. So the next topic that we will tackle is the conflict and cooperation in the Security Council. So nearly first in 2 decades of UN's existence, the USSR or the Russians had no allies in the Security Council and few in General Assembly. And then the Soviet Union had to lean heavily on the veto power. So veto power means that it's the power of denial or rejecting someone's proposal. So in first 5 years of existence of the Security Council, the USSR used the veto for 40 times, but then the US didn't use it at all costs until in 1970. And then the Russians did not veto the US-led peace enforcement operation in the Persian Gulf because US and Russians accommodated each other to keep peace, and then they work each other in order to maintain those peace agreement. Okay, so balintag lang yung angle para maiba. Let's proceed to Economic and Social Council. So it is responsible for coordinating of the UN family of more specialized agencies and organizations. It means that siya may mo coordinate sa tanan nga specialized agencies nga dagam niya specialized agencies nga naa sa UN. So siya mo kanay mo responsible ana tanan. And then the most controversial organ of the UN is the specific task that several specialized agencies have sought accomplish have draw widespread criticism. So gi-criticize siya because of kanang draw siya widespread criticism because na mga controversial nga wala nila na trabaho or nabayig kayo ang uban nga agencies. And then ang ilang second set of controversies over ECOSOC or means Economic and Social Council is the center siya sa UNESCO. So UNESCO is a specialized agency of the UN that attempts to improve literacy rates in developing world. So mo ni sila ang mo-develop kanang ang ilang goal is to educate or kana bang ipataas ang literacy rates nga para sa ikaangat sa ato nga economy or kanang para ang usa ka country is mo kuan pa jud mo angat. Okay, so before na makalimtan day ang UNESCO stands for United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization. So next, mo proceed ta sa International Court of Justice. So the International Court of Justice or pwede po siya tawag na to nga World Court is headquartered in The Hague, Netherlands permanently in session. So dito ni siya session sige then the principal judicial organ of the UN ni siya. And then ang kaning court is composed of 15 judges that are elected by the GA. So ang GA is General Assembly and Security Council for 9-year terms. So ang ilang term is 9 years. And then ang trabaho ani niya is to hear cases brought to it by state involved. So unsa nga problema sa state mo nga ilang mga kaso dire sa International Court na siya husayon. And then it also provides advisory opinions to the General Assembly and Security Council at their request. So if dili masabtan sa General Assembly or Security Council, kani pud siya mo provide og opinion kung unsa man pag-solve ang problem. Okay, so mo proceed ta sa ato ang second to the last topic, which is the UN peacekeeping mission. So first is the Blue Helmets. So it's a UN peacekeeping through supervision forces dispatched at the invitation of parties to a local conflict. So sila mo yung mga forces nila or armies na mo dispatch sa invitation to create a conflict. Then their primary mission is to serve as armed sentries, separating combatants to make violation of a peace agreement more difficult. So kanipod sila may nga difficult para makuha ang peace agreement. Mura sila og mugama guro og conflict pod. And then also known as Blue Berets, they wear UN headgear but retain their respective national uniforms. So ang UN headgear amoy murag symbolize sa United Nations anila ang uniform. And then next is the observers mission is one of the types of UN missions po. Then international forces that present to observe ceasefire. Sila may mukuhan sa ceasefire, which ceasefire means is a temporary peace agreement between two nations which in a war. And then organized for the opposing forces in a dispute. So motong ingon nga sila may mo organize sa duha ka forces nga gakuan. Then peacekeeping missions, these troops not only observe a ceasefire but also act as a buffer between the two sides of the conflict. So dili lang sila kanang mo observe sa ceasefire, napod sila laing trabaho which is the buffer kanang mo kuan sa kada kuan ba mo paminaw sa kada side, which is kada side nga gaaway sa kuan gaaway. Okay, so let's proceed to our last topic. So wala man siya na kuan, generalize lang pud nako, which is the United Nations Day rather effectiveness. So in general term na lang is the United Nations effectiveness is kanang siya mo'y ga unite sa uban nga nations through peace agreement. Then although na siya mga lapses nga nakuan, pero sa more than 6 decades of existence niya na proven jud ang iyang mga objectives, which to create a peace peace and have a good relation to other nations, then founders were essentially correct. Then the UN was not designed to be all things to all states. It was created as a forum for discussion of global issues. So as what I've said, mo po ni siya mo murag mo generalize sa uban nga issues para masulbad, not creating a war. So as a coordinating body for development, so motong gingon, development aid and humanitarian relief as a means to facilitate collective security when the world's major powers agree on what we should be done to meet specific threats. And overall, it has performed these functions remarkably well, even though it has been a target of justifiable criticism. So nam uban nga mo criticize jud kay di jud ganahan jud nga mo kuan og musik o greater power, pero ang United Nations, ang iya yung goal is to unite other nations and to connect their goals and to serve as one.
Such high level of quality. And then the World Bank owned by 186 members countries. The World Bank has become the primary financer and development project in lesser developed countries. So the World Bank is the primary financer of development project in lesser country and also in the as well as the largest creditors. So in 1980s, it had become clear that substantial proportion of this project were deeply counterproductive, planned without taking into account local technologies, the environment, or sustainability. So the bank's program are means to achieve the UN's Millennium Development Goals. So the means to achieve the UN Millennium Development Goals is since they has a lot of sponsored project in doing. So they committed billions of credits, and then the bank has been pressured into providing funds for areas beyond its original intention, areas where other NGOs are working, such as education or UNESCO and HIV/AIDS or the HWO. And then the International Monetary Fund, so created to regulate and liberalize the international monetary system to facilitate global trade and investment. So the IMF or the International Monetary Fund goals is to include the proportion of International Monetary Corporation through a permanent institution that provides the mechanism for the consultation and collaboration of international monetary problems. And then the International Monetary Fund oversight and regulation of the international monetary is important because each country currency relative value fluctuates in the global currency market. And then IMF programs are run by a 24 members executive board headquartered in Washington, D.C. So the GATC and the World Trade Organization or the WTO. So in March 1948, a final version of the ITO character was finally approved at UN conference, but the organization went much farther than that in regulating employment, investment, and other aspects of trade never came into being. So the GATT was an ideal apparatus for the post-war years, helping to negotiate reduction in tariffs throughout the 1950s to 1960s that led the unprecedented rates of trade worldwide. So in 1970s and 1980s, the organization's shortcomings became increasingly obvious and problematic. So they became so problematic. And then in 1982, the GATT ministers came together to launch a new negotiating ground but could not come to terms on agriculture. So the minister of the God, they came together to launch a new negotiating but the minister could not come when it comes to agriculture. So in April 1994, the Hawaii route was successfully completed and the World Trade Organization was born. So the World Trade Organization was born in April 1994. At the same time, the Uruguay round was successfully completed. And then, in the late 1989, riots broke out in the streets of Seattle as protesters came out in full force against the World Trade Organization. So, Korea, Chile, Argentina, Mexico, Australia, Brazil, India, Turkey, Japan, Guatemala, Indonesia, and Canada have all used the World Trade Organization dispute system to respond to perceived breaches in fair and free trade. So these countries use the dispute system in World Trade Organization. Okay, so next is the Bretton Woods Institution into the future. So the Bretton Woods Institution have not only survived since the end of the World War II, but also have expanded their missions and membership. So in World War II, the Bretton Woods did not only survive, but they also expanded their membership and their missions. And then the Bretton Woods institution has its best contributed at worst cost, economic, political, social, and even environmental crisis. And then governmental organizations. So NGOs operate across national boundaries independent of government. So most NGOs cannot command resources as easily as states or IGOs. They tend to focus their efforts on a specific project to maximize their effectiveness. So they cannot command easily on other resources like states or IGOs because they are more on focusing on their specific projects so that they can expand or maximize their effectiveness. So NGO power and global governance. So NGOs have come into their own as significant players of the world stage and thus players in global governance. So this is a love note of ano, a love note of a one of the political or si Mary Ann the okay, so NGOs trade in the currency of ideas, especially ideas of good and evil, right and wrong. The ideas compel even when the organizations cannot. So NGOs attract support more than they can enforce compliances. So NGOs were instrumental in the early 1990s when their effort and activism led to the UN Assembly's adoption of the Declaration on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence against Women by anonymous consent. So ang NGOs became an instrumental in the early 90s because they are the one who nag-declare sa the violations against women. So they are the one who lead the UN assemblies to adopt the declaration of the violence against women. So NGOs are able to garner political access and participation in international institutions, thereby facilitating the global governance system that includes many different actors. So globalization has contributed to the growing power and number of NGOs. So ang globalization is nakahelp siya sa NGOs in which they contributed to to growing the power and the number of NGOs. And then states and IGOs are increasingly reliant on NGOs for information, implementation, and increasingly globalized world. So they are also reliant on states and IGOs sa NGOs in which in when it comes to information, implementation, and increasing globalized world. So thank you.